Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and we're here for a new session in our Spring 2015 Financial Automation webcast series. Today, I'm happy to welcome a returning speaker for us, Murray Fife. Murray probably needs no introduction to many of you. He's an active speaker, blogger, and book author in the Dynamics AX community. He's also a veteran AX solution architect. He is here today to show us some financial tweaks in Dynamics AX that even non-developers can tackle. And if you're following Murray on Twitter, which you really should be, you might have had a sneak peek this morning at some of the topics that he has in plan for us today. And before we get started, I also would like to just recognize our Financial Automation webcast series sponsors and thank them for their support of MSDynamicsWorld.com. They are Perceptive Software, Metafile, DocStar, Bottom Line Technologies, and Avalara. So as we get started, please know that you can use the Q&A block or the chat that you'll see to the right side of the webcast session to enter your questions and comments. And without further delay, Murray, let me hand it off to you.
Great. Jason, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you should now have control.
Okay, and let me just grab my screen. And then just tell me when you can see my screen.
We can see your screen now.
Right. Okay, so welcome everybody, and today we're going to, this is actually the second time that I've done this type of presentation, and but we're going to have a number of different sort of topics that we work through. But one of the things that everyone should appreciate is that you can go out and you can, even if you're not a developer, there's a lot of things that you can do within Dynamics AX just to tweak the system here and there. And it's not hard to make these changes. I'm not suggesting that you go out and make wholesale changes within the system, and you may want to have a little bit more control over your development than what I'm going to show you here. But I want to demystify some of the things around Dynamics AX and how things get done, so that then even when you're within the financials area and you want to make some changes, or you're thinking about making some changes, then just keep in mind that you really can do that, and you can take control of the system. And then when you're in a pinch, then maybe go to a developer. So there's being able to do these development changes is just something that you should have in your back pocket, or at least know that you can do these. And that's really what I'm trying to promote here and trying to show you all. So for this series of tips, we're going to walk through a number of different scenarios. I'm hoping to get through all 6 of them if I can. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off by, let me just grab my mouse here. I just want to prove to you that you can code too, so let's get on to that. Now, something that is really the most basic thing to do, and sometimes the most useful, is the ability to go out and add fields to Dynamics AX. You've got a lot of control over how you can do this. And you're not going out and building entire modules. You're just going out and adding additional information. And this is what I'm going to show you here was a true scenario that came up during a demonstration. And I wasn't judging the people for what they were trying to do, but it's a good example of how you can sort of tweak the system, and that's adding a field to Dynamics AX. So what I can do here is I'm going to move over and I'm going to go into Dynamics AX. Now, you can do things a more controlled way if you know exactly what you're wanting to do, but sometimes you don't know where you need to make a change, or you know on screen where you want to make a change. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a shortcut and a way that you can get into the development environment. Now, in this scenario, what I want to do is, here I've got my payables transactions, and what I'm wanting to do is I want to add another date here. So we've got all of the dates. We've got the discount date and the due date that we've got here. But I want to go out and add another date, which is even though this is due on the 23rd, maybe I want to have another date that says, yeah, this is when I'm actually going to select it for payment. So I'm not going to tweak this date, this automatic date. I'm just going to add another reference date into the system. Now, we know that we want to change the screen, and we know that we need to add a new field here. But as a non-developer, or someone who really doesn't get into the code or into the tables on a daily basis, you may think, well, where do I make this change? So here's the trick. What you do is you can go into personalize this form, and you may have used this before to go out and add fields to forms or remove fields, and the personalization is a great tool to take advantage of. And here we can see that we've got all of our dates here, and something to keep in mind, over here we can actually see the table that this is associated with. But if I wanted to make a change, then what I can do is I can click on the information here, and it's going to give me the form name that I want to change, which is my vendor transactions form. If I click edit, and if I have the privilege, then it's going to take me over to the actual table itself, or the form itself in this case. If you go down here to the data sources, then this is going to show you all of the tables that are associated to this. Then we can, if we expand out the vendor transactions table, then we can see all of the fields that are linked within this table. Now we can't go out and edit this because it's inside of this form. So what we're going to do is we're going to just tile these screens here, and what you'll have is you'll have the vendor table here, and then you've got the application object tree, which gives you access to really everything. If I wanted to go and add a field to this, then I'd just go into this data dictionary area, go to the tables, then just type in vend trans. And that's going to allow us to see this table. I can open this or right mouse click and say I want to open it up in a new table, which sort of takes it away and separates it out so that I just see this one field here, or this one table. If I click on the fields, then you're going to see all of the fields in that table. Now we don't need to change anything for the standard field. All we want to do is we want to add a field. So I can just say I want to go new and I want to add a date or a date field. Then if I want to, I can rename this. So I'm just giving it a different name. What this is doing in the background is this is doing quite a bit, because this is going to go into the database, it's going to make the change, and it's going to create the table for us. And I'm just going to change the label and also the help so it pops up here. And there's a lot of different options that you can have that you can change on this field. But just for going out and adding a field, then this is really all you need to do. Now once I've done this, I've added the field here. And if I just save this, then it's going out in the background. It's going to take a second, it's going to compile it, and it's added it to the database. So I don't have to go into SQL Server, I don't have to go into any database or anything. I've just gone out and added that in there. So now we've got this field called the proposed due date. So if I close this down and return back here to the personalization, I can actually go and say I want to add a field. And if I go into the vendor transactions table, let me actually do this again. So I'm going to just back out of this form and come back in and refresh the form. And then I'll personalize this again. And what that's going to allow me to do is that's going to allow me to find that field within the tables, or it should. So notice here, if I push this over to the side, now our new field that we created is in here, and it sits here just like any other field within the system. And I can add that, and that's going to add that to the form itself. Check that. And then now it's a display field that I can take advantage of. So this is just refreshing. And let me try this once more. Click on that ad. So now I've gone out, I've personalized that. I've got a proposed due date here. If I change this and put it in the actual area that I want it to be in, then I can rearrange this around, close this down, and now if I refresh this, I've got my proposed due date popping up. Because of the form, then it's read-only, but it's still a date. Now, just as a side note, so now with a little bit of extra work, I could go and make this editable. I could add in a calendar button in there, but I can at least go in and change this proposed date. But when, for example, I go out and I'm going into payables, and maybe I create a payment journal here, and something that's really interesting that you can do, so if I just say I want to create a new vendor payment, go into the lines, then when we go and do the payment selection, or a payment proposal, sorry, then we could go out and select the payments based on all of the standard fields that are here, but also we could filter this out. So I could click on the select button, and this is going to allow me to do a filter on this. So if I add a new field here and choose the vendor transactions table, then I should be able to type in the proposed field, and now I can, so now I've got the ability to filter this out so that I have only the items that have the proposed due date of today. So I've gone out, I've added a field, it's in the database, but now even without changing the form inside of the code and adding it to the physical form itself, I can go out and use it and personalize my forms and take advantage of it. So this, being able to go out and tweak the database and maybe add additional fields is really an easy thing to do, and maybe something that you could take advantage of. Now, you don't need to do what I'm doing here. You could add coding fields or groups or different ways to handle customers or vendors or payables or receivables transactions in the system. It's a simple thing to do, and as long as you're not changing the business logic behind the system, then really it doesn't impact your upgrade too much. I would suggest that maybe you have a little bit of a better development methodology than I've got. Maybe put it into a project, put it into a model, and manage it that way, but it's just something that you can do. So this is sort of the first example that I was wanting to go through, and I just want to stop here, see if there are any questions on anything that I've shown here before we move on to the next item.
No questions so far, Murray, but I would just remind folks to use the Q&A block as we go along. Murray, as you can see, we'll be stopping periodically to take questions.
Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to show you something different that you can do. This is a sort of coding, but really it's a little bit of configuration, but you still do it within the development environment. This is something that I worked on a while ago. Pop up this and close down my screen. And yeah. Is there a question?
Murray, it looks like we do have one question that came in as we were kind of transitioning there, asking how do you make it editable in the form?
So for that, I think because I added it as a personalization, then it just popped up as a read-only field. What I'd do if I was going to use this over and over again is I'd actually go into the form. So you'd go here to the forms and find that the form that we modified just before. So let me expand this out, taking a little bit longer than I thought. And drag and drop that field over into the form itself, and then everyone has access to it. That'll give you a lot more control over it, and also that'll allow you to make it make the field editable. So I took a little bit of a shortcut here as I went through, but the better thing to do is to go and just drag it over onto the form and use it like a normal field. So let me show you that. So if I go into my Vend trans table here, and I've got my data sources here. I actually have a design set up. And I go into the design page, then if I want to go down here, go into the payment tab, go into the payment group, payment again, and then the discounts. Then there's a trick here that if I open this up in a new window, let me do that again. So I'm just going down to find the discount dates that are there. Then all you need to do, is go back to the data dictionary, and go to the tables, and go to the vendor trans that I've modified. You find the field, and then all you do is just drag that field over, or go out, and I think the other way to do it is you say that I want to create a edit box, let's say a date edit box, and then point it to that field. So there's some other things that we can do, but I'll just stop there and let you all try it out and sort of work through it. So now the next item, we're going to actually make some changes or to sort of how the system works. But we're not going to do it through necessarily through coding. And if I go into any of my customers that I've got set up here within the system, then there's contact information that's associated with those customers. And the contact information that gets sent out by default with Dynamics AX. Go back over to my contact form. That is. Yeah. Then whenever you set up this contact information and add a new contact type, then there's only a few different types of pieces of information that you can store here. And today, I'm big on social media. So I'd like to go out against all of my customers and also my contacts and start tracking maybe their Twitter account or their Facebook handle or their Google Plus account. But it doesn't allow me to do it. All it allows me to do is maybe create a URL or an email address. So say, for example, you wanted to add a new type for this, then we can do a little bit of investigation. We can track this down and we can change this pretty quickly. Again, I'm going to use this shortcut here to go out and personalize. And this is going to bring me over into the AOT again in just a second. Or it's going to show me the form, and then it's going to allow me to sort of look at this information and find out where the information is stored. My personalization is taking a little bit longer to pop up than I thought. So while this is popping up, I'll show you where I can go and maintain this information. But what is happening is this type field here, right here it is stored in the electronic addresses table, and it has a field of type. So this is useful because once I know this table, then I can start doing a little bit of detective work and change it myself. So I'm going to return back here to the application object tree. And I'm going to close this down. And I'm going to open up the tables again. I'm going to return back here. So I want to find the logistics electronic address. So by doing a little bit of sleuthing, slowing down ever so slightly. Yeah. So here in my tables, I'm going to find the logistics electronic addresses table. And then I can go out and I can see the fields. There's not as much as there was in the other table, but down here I've got this type. Now, the list of items that pop up here is called an enumeration. And if we look over here, then there's a note within the properties that says this is the logistics electronic address method type. And I can grab this over here, then we can actually see that properly. So now we know where the list of all of those, the phone number and the email address comes from. So if I compress this back and then go to the section here, which is called base enumerations or base lists, then I can click on that and I'm going to find this item here, which is the reference that was in that table. If I click on that, then we'll see here's the phone number, the email, the URL, the telex, and the fax. If I wanted to go out and add a new item here for Twitter, then all I do is create a new record and give it a name. And I could add another one here, and I could say Facebook. Now, the label's important. The name is just going to be what shows up, but the label is what is going to be shown to the people as they're going through. So I'm going out, I'm just going to save that. It's going to update the database and add these two items here. And then everything compiles and there's no problems there. Now if I return back, when I first come back, it doesn't show me that anything's been changed. All I really need to do is I need to just refresh this form. And if all things are working properly, then we're actually going to see a couple of different data types that we can manage here against the contacts, which would be the social media accounts. So let me just minimize this. We'll take a look at that. Now if I add a new item here, notice here that now I have Twitter and Facebook profile that then I could go out and track. Now, the reason why I want to do this is because now I can go out and I can start filtering this information out based on the type of URL that we've got here or type of social media that we've got. So it gives us better reporting. Also, it segregates out the information. Then if you really want to get clever, you can change this icon and you can make it so that when people click on it, it goes out and opens up the Facebook page, or it goes out and creates an automated tweet for you from the Twitter account, or really anything, Foursquare, Google+, or anything within the system. So this is just a great way to extend out the system. But again, I haven't done any coding to change the lookups that show here. The concept that you really just need to keep in mind is that there's a lot of the list boxes or the drop-downs that pop up here within the system are not hard-coded in the code. They're just managed through these lists. And then you can go out and add your color to the information. This could also be used for things like phone numbers. If we go out and look at some of the other ones here, for example, we've got all of the different electronic address types. So we've got phone numbers and pages, and we can change those as well. So there's a lot of different options, but it's really easy to do. And until you start changing the way that the system works, you're really not impacting any of the coding along the way. So that's just a quick change, but again, another way that you can do a little bit of coding within the system. So I'll stop and see if there are any questions that have come through in the Q&A panel. I can find my mouse.
Yeah, so there's a question on how can you, on how can you make the personalization that you showed active? Can you sort of explain that in a different way?
Now, the personalization for, was that for the first example I'm thinking?
I believe so.
Now, because I was sort of working through this as I was setting up for this demonstration, and it's really based on the I think I'm not quite sure whether I'll be able to answer it completely, but I'm guessing that it was based on one of the parameters that I had on the field was stopping the field from being enabled by default. So if you notice that when I went into the fields itself, then there was a number of flags and controls against the date field that I created. I might hold off on that, and I'll make a post on how to fix that, and then everyone can sort of follow me on Twitter and they could probably grab that information. So I'm going to defer that or punt it just at this point.
All right, and there's a question of, let's see here. So another question, can they be used in reporting is the question. I'm unfortunately not sure exactly what they're referring to.
Now, but the answer to that is that they can be used in reporting because they're now a field in the database. You'd need to go out and add it physically to the report. And it's both here for the field type, and if we go back to the accounts payable example that we were working through as well, then because the field is there, then it's available to you. Now, here if I go and change it and personalize this just a little bit differently, if I add a field and add the proposed due date here as well, so I'm adding it here to the grid, and I'm going to pop it up here beside remove that field. Do it once more. Then now this field is popping up here within the grid because, again, it's within the database and within the form. If you go out and personalize the form itself and add it in by default, then everyone would see that. One thing is that also if I go out and export this out to Excel, then, which is really my favorite way of going out and performing a lot of reporting, because you already have the information available here within the grid, then this proposed payment data is also going to show up here within Excel, and it's going to allow you to report off it and manipulate it within the system. So with zero hands-on or zero coding of SQL Server Reporting Services reports, then the field is still available to you and you can still run any reports or extract any information out that you want. So let this run in the background, but it's just an illustration that the field is real. It's not sort of like a fake field that's been sort of tacked onto the system and nothing else recognizes it.
Okay, a couple of other questions here. So one person wonders, is there any sort of documentation of what you're presenting today so that people can be reminded of it afterwards?
Yeah, they actually, if all of these items, if I can get out here to a browser, then these are things that I've always, that I've done in the past. And if you just go to my blog site, which is tinkersnotebook.com, then I've got a lot of sort of tips and tricks that I've posted out there. If you do a search on adding fields or adding the contact, changing the contact information, then those are going to be on the site as well. Taking a while for it to pop up. But all of these that I'm working through are coming really from that website, and you can go back and get detailed step-by-step instructions on how all of these work. Also, what I'll do is I'm going to probably post a list for Jason, and he can post that out on the Dynamics World website as well.
And we are recording today's session.
Yeah.
We can post it alongside that.
Okay.
There's one other. Oh, great. Yeah, and there's one other just sort of general request. If the time permits, someone asks, can you slow down your demos at all, because they say you're really flying.
Yes. Sorry, sometimes I work a little bit fast, so I'll slow down for sure. So let's change gears a little bit, and I'm going to show you something which isn't really development, but it is something that everybody should know that they can do, and also something that the financial people should really take advantage of and embrace, and that's workflows. And workflows are all of these approval processes that you can take advantage of and incorporate into Dynamics AX, and it's standard within the system. And they're not hard to set up. Now, I'm going to set a simple one up to show you how this works, and then you can sort of extrapolate out to all of the other areas that you can take advantage of it. But the example that I'm going to show is just a simple one, which is turning on workflow approvals for journals. And you can do that within the general ledger. Now, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the general ledger. And if you go into any of the journals that you've got set up within Dynamics AX, and I'm going to pop up this one, then there's a lot of controls here, and you can have just manual approval, and you can block the journals, but there's an item here which is approval workflows. And if you turn this on, then what you're doing is you're telling the system, I want to use a certain workflow to manage this. The good thing is that every one of these journals that you create, you can do what I'm about to show. But the first step is that you need to have a workflow that says, how do I want to approve this? That's easy to grab, because if you look here within the general ledger, and also within all of the other modules like payables and receivables, then you'll see that there's a button here for workflows. If you're on 2009, then the same, what I'm showing you still works. Just the way that you edit the workflow is just a little bit differently. It's not quite as visual as what I'm going to show. So you go into these workflows and you start off and there's nothing there, and you think that there's no functionality, but what it means is that there's no templates for you. So I want to go out and I want to create a daily journal here. I'm going to create this. The type of workflow that you create is very important, because if you want to have workflows around the allocations or the eliminations, then you need to use a different type of workflow. Also, while the canvas is popping up, if you want to really do a little bit of more development, then you can create additional types of workflows that are linked to different forms within the system. Now, so now I've moved into the workflow itself, and the reason why you use these is so that you can notify people, and people have emails sent to them or pop-up messages within the system. But I'm just going to create a very simple one, and the way that a workflow works is that it's pretty simple. You have a start and an end, and then you have something in the middle. If you look over here on the right-hand side, we've got, or left-hand side, we've got all of the different things that we can do with the workflow. And there's not a lot, but these will change based on the type of workflow that you create. But I just want to create an approval process. Notice the red arrow that's connecting this up to the start button. This is enabled because I went out and I turned on this button. So it's sort of like a great little bit of a trick to save you a little bit of time. Let me slowing down a little bit. Try that once more. So I'm going to just drag this down and plonk it down here onto the workflow. So now I've got this approval step, and you want to have this completely connected, so I'm going to link it up to the end button. Notice I just went out and hovered over this and then drug down and connected to the end. Now also, we've got all of these error messages that are showing up. And in this case, error messages are good because really what they do is they tell you what you need to do to finalize up this workflow. So there's around about 4 different things that we need to do. So how I work through a workflow is I just start at the top and click on it. And what it's saying is that no one's been assigned to this workflow. So I can fix that by selecting the user, or I could have assign this to a hierarchy within the organization or a position. But I just want to select a user, choose admin, who's me, click on the arrow to add it, and then now I've assigned this task to the administrator. There's other things that you can do later on where you can have escalations. This needs to be performed within a certain time, or this needs to be completed by all approvers. So if you have multiple people assigned to this, then one person can approve it, some of them can approve it, a percentage can approve it, or everyone needs to agree with complete consensus before this moves on. But I've done that, and now the message has disappeared. It's saying now that we need to add a little bit of text to say what the people are approving. So again, click on that, and this is a journal approval. And think of the subject and the instructions like an email with the header and the body. So journal approval required. Then I can say, please approve this journal. And there's other things that you can do. We could insert placeholders that show information associated with the journal, but I just want to keep this simple for now. Now there's one final item. It's not really a warning, but it's just a suggestion. And what it's doing is it's saying, this is the message that's going to show up whenever you create the journal. So now I've got no errors, and I've got a completely functional workflow. I could have manual decisions and have multiple sort of steps through this, but I just want to save this away. A name and a version, and then activate it. So this is not really development for the most part, but it is something that most people think is more of a technical chore or a technical thing to set up. And I really want to illustrate this because it's not technical. It's just defining a business process, and all of the department leaders and people within the financials arena, you should know that you can go out and do this. Now, if I return back here to my journal, now what I can do is I can say I want to turn on workflow, and that workflow that I just created is now showing up. And I can say yes because I don't have any instances already. I can save this and close it. So now what I have is when I create the journal, then a workflow should be initiated. I'm just going to do something here in the background. In the real world, this is, you wouldn't have to do this because what's running in the background is a process that looks for all the workflows and starts running them, but I don't have that running here. So now, to sort of show you how this works, if I just go out and create a general journal, and I choose just create a general journal here, then nothing changes because there's no workflow associated with this. If I create a workflow-enabled journal, then notice here it's got now this button which pops up here saying I need to submit this for approval. Also, if I click on this information button, then it should also show me the submission instructions that I had as well. But I can now go out and submit, create the journal, and create the lines, and then the workflow is controlling this within the system. The this is, you may not turn this on for all workflows, for all journals, but if you segregate out, for example, the month-end journals, so here's the instructions popping up, or if you have special journals that you want to control and not necessarily allow everyone to perform to use them, or you want to just watch them, then this is a great way that you can manage it. Let me just go into here, and we'll create the journal and then submit it. But really what I'm doing now while my system catches up is really just a formality to prove it out. I'll see if there are any questions about the workflows as I'm working through this. And I can sort of, I can do two things at once. So I'm just going to say that this is consulting. It was $100, and it's coming out of petty cash. And notice here that I don't have a post button because now the workflow is controlling this. So if I exit out of my journal, then until I go through this workflow, through the submission, it's not allowing me to do anything else. So, Jason, are there any questions that have come through about the workflow that I'm showing here?
No, there are no questions right now.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, yeah. There's actually a user error on that point. So now if I just click submit, then I can say please approve, submit it. And then if I look over here in the background, then in the background it's going out and it's kicking this off, and it's going to send an email message or it's going to send a notification to different people within the organization based on the workflow that I've set up. So now that we can see there's one record here that's being processed around about every 30 seconds, and this goes out and looks for more information, then assigns it to different people. So I'm just waiting for this to go down to 0. Now if I go back to here, to my workflow, I can actually approve this. So all of the approve, reject, point it to another person and so forth is all standard within the system. It looks okay, I'm going to approve it. This is going to now run again and start assigning it to different people. If you have multiple levels, so for example, getting more clever with this, you could tell the system that I want, if the journal is above a certain amount, then these people need to approve it. If it's below X amount, then it needs to go into these different areas. If it's for a certain cost center, then it needs to be routed to these different people. Now that I've performed the workflow process, then there's no more actions that I can do. I can go in and have a complete audit of all of the changes that were made here for this workflow. So I can see when the approval started, who approved it, what time they approved it, any comments that were in there. And now, because the workflow is completed, I can post this, and this becomes a journal within the system, and everything's fine. So workflows are a great way that you can have logic in the system without going out and doing some coding. I'm just going to close that down. If there are any questions, and I'm just looking through, and
we do have a couple comments. One person notes that adding conditions on workflows is not very easy, and modifying workflows with conditions is not easy.
And now, no, I'm not sure whether it's really that hard to do. So we've got enough time. I can talk through this, and we can show how you go and make changes and add conditions. But there's one thing that I've found is that there's two different ways that you can handle conditions. Because sometimes, say for example, if you have a large workflow with a number of different sort of options, then you don't want to have a great big sort of spaghetti workflow in here with every different condition built into it. A better way to do that is you can have multiple workflows that only get activated on certain scenarios. So here I could go out and I could add a conditional decision to my workflow here. Let's see. Something happened there. Close that down. Or, sorry, something just happened to my version of Dynamics X. Or what you can do is, so you can have multiple versions of the workflows, and then you put a condition on the workflow itself and say, only initiate this when this certain situation has occurred. So for example, if we want to route it to a different cost center, then you manage that at the header level of the workflow. The other way that when you go out and use the actual condition element that I'm going to show you in, right here, then that's still, still don't think it's that hard to use. So we'll go and look at that as I'm moving through.
One more question?
Yes.
Getting the process workflow window opened from tools, is this a new option?
So I thought this may open up an unplanned tip, because I noticed that this was added into the demonstration environment with the, I think it was the CU7 release of AX, or it might have been with the R3. So what the question was is, you notice I went here and the workflow processor is here within the tools menu. And I thought this is great because this is standard. And I've made a blog about it, and I thought that was pretty cool. But then I realized that I think someone had gone and made a change. Now, to digress a little bit, as I was looking at this, and this is another sort of development tip, this tools menu that shows up is actually a menu within Dynamics AX, within AOT, and it's called the Global Tools menu. And if you expand that out, then you'll see that it has all of the standard tools that are in here. And then there's the options and customization that's built in here. Then notice I've got a link down here for the workflow processor. So what Microsoft did for the environment is they went out and created a menu item, which is for the workflow processor, and then drugged it over here into the Global Tools menu so it shows up there. And then it has a menu name. So this isn't hard to do. You just create a menu. You've got a form already, and then you click on you create a menu item for it, and then put it here into the Global Tools so that you've got quick access. Now, I've taken that and used that a couple of different ways. This synchronize option, I went out and added this to the tools menu because this was the synchronization of Dynamics AX with Exchange, so it synchronizes all of my contacts and tasks and so forth. And also I added another one here, which was for the mobile browser for WMS. But again, that was just a class that I added, and then you put it here into the Global Tools. If there are things that users use or you as an administrator use over and over again, and if you've had to go and use the mobile, for example, the workflow processor and go and find it here within AOT to open it up, then keep in mind that you can go and change this menu here. There's also something that I haven't really been able to get working, but there's a context menu. One of the menus up here is for the right mouse click button when you click somewhere. So you can personalize that as well. So I sort of digress a little bit, but it's a neat trick to know that the tools menu within Dynamics AX is actually a menu that you can customize. So I'll quickly move back. And we'll go back to the ledger workflows, and since someone asked, we'll just sort of look at these a little bit more, and we'll look at the conditions. So say, for example, we wanted to only have approval or have a different approval when a journal is above a certain amount or when it's been posted to a certain cost center. And what I'm doing here is I'm just going to move this over a little bit, and then you go and add a conditional decision. And I'm going to link that up to the Start button. And because I like everything to be tidy, I'm going to link that there. Make this straight. And a conditional decision just has a true or false statement associated with it. So if it's true, then it goes to an approval. If it's false, it just goes straight to the end. If I go into the basic settings of this condition, then what it's going to do is we just have so I'm just going to give this a name and say it's the posting above $100. Down here we have all of the different conditions that we've got. Right now we don't have any, so I can click Add Condition. And now I'm going to, a condition is really just going out and looking at something within the table. So I could go out into this table here, the item here, and I have all of the fields that are associated with this. So here we have all of the cost centers and so forth. But if I want to say if the credit total is greater than 100, and maybe I want to add another one, and say if the cost center is, and then do a search on my cost centers for the marketing campaigns, then what's going to happen is now only the journals that are posted to my marketing cost center that are above $100 are going to go through an approval process. Now, you can also change these conditions a little bit. So you can have all conditions, or you can have either conditions here. And what you're doing is just creating a filter. It's not really that hard to do. You just need to know what you want to perform within the condition. Now, also the other thing that I talked about is that if you want to, rather than have a condition here within the workflow, maybe you want to just activate the workflow on certain conditions. Then there's this activation option at the top, and you can do exactly the same thing and just add a condition. And say if, for this case, if the cost center is marketing again, then only initiate this workflow if it's being posted to that cost center. So what that would do is that would actually simplify down my conditions that I have down here in the base area. Now, if you want to have multiple conditions, then you can just go out and link them up exactly the same way, and you can cascade these conditions. In which case, then, in this case, this needs to have an approval step as well. And then if it's false, then again, I want to go to the end statement. By creating all of these sort of cascading conditions, there's a lot of things that you can do. But you need to start thinking about how you want to manage these, and I really don't think that this is a hard thing to do. So, are there?
I don't believe we have any other questions right now.
Yeah.
Actually, hold one moment. Oh no, we do not right now.
Yeah, and I saw there was one comment about the part one. I think part one did have other development tweaks in it, and we did that a while ago, and I know that that's been posted on the Dynamics World website as well.
Right, and I can post a link to that as we go here.
So this is, we've got, I think, time enough just for one more of the tweaks or suggestions. And this one really is a development tweak, or some people might call it close that down again. Might call it a little bit of a hack. But this is something that might be interesting to people to know, and maybe that's something that you might want to take advantage of and sort of change the system just a little bit. Now, everyone's probably familiar with the document attachments functionality that's built into Dynamics AX. It allows you to go out and really attach anything to any record within the system. But not everyone may know that there's a second type of document attachments that is scattered throughout the system that's called document management. And I stumbled on this a while ago and then started taking a look at it, and actually I think a customer of mine pointed it out as well. But if you go into, for example, the sales and marketing area, and if you look at, look at the quotations or the prospects, then there's a little button in there that you can take advantage of. So if I go and look at a quotation that I've got, open this up in just a second, and within the quotations, if you go and look within the General tab of the quotations, it's opening up now. So here's our document attachments that everyone's sort of familiar with. But if I click over here to the General, then there's this also Documents button. This is interesting because what this is a function that allows you to attach documents just like you can with document attachments itself. But you also have the ability to drag and drop files over here. And what this also does is this goes out and links up to whatever record you have, and then you can make notes against the document too. So this could also paste from the clipboard. You could send this as an email. So there's a lot more functionality built into this. So if you go out and go back into the personalization here, then this button that we've got is built into the form. So I'm going to go out and look at the quotations page, and then I'm going to go into the designs, and I'll look at the list to start off with. Actually, go to here, go into the action panel, go to the General tab, and go to the related information. There's a button here, which is from sales and marketing for documents. And then something else that's in here is that this is linked to a menu item, which is called sales and marketing documents. The interesting thing is that, say for example, if I go back to Dynamics AX here and close this down, and then maybe open up a sales order. When I open up a sales order, it doesn't have, in this General tab, any of the document management within the system. But, say for example, I go over to here and go to the forms, and find the form for the sales table, then I can just drag and drop this and share it between the two forms. So I'm just going to open up the sales table, go into the design, go into the same form that I had before, go into the action panel. Then go down here to the general information and look at the related information. Here you can see all of the different buttons that are linked to this. If I grab this and hold down the control key, then I can go and add that menu item to my form. I'm going to save that. And when I return back to, after this is compiled, then when I return back and open up my sales order, then you'll see that that button that I added is going to be there in the system. So this is almost like a little bit of a cheat, because all of the logic is built into that button or built into the menu item, and all I'm doing here is I'm just sort of stealing it and popping it over somewhere else. Now if I open up my sales order, then and when it refreshes, if I go to my General tab, now I have the same document link that I had before in the quotations available here within the sales order. Now, what's even more impressive about this is that if I drag and drop any item into here, then even though this button came from the sales quotation, it doesn't attach it to the quotation. It knows that it's a sales order, and it will attach the document to the sales order as a link. So this gives you an additional document management capability here within different forms. If you went out and did the same thing, say for example you did it against the contacts, or maybe you did it against the customers, then it gives you the capabilities of dragging and dropping emails over here into the documents, or attaching files that you get from the customer to the sales orders or to any other piece of information in the system. If you go out and add it to products, then it's another drag and drop file capability, but it's a little bit different from the attachments. It's not, it's just going to be working a little bit differently. The reason why this scenario is really important is because, or useful, is that it sort of highlights that if you see something in one form, sometimes you can just steal it and put it into another form, and the logic is going to be managed through the background depending on how it's been configured. So I did no coding, but I went out and then added a different style of document management directly to a different form, and everything sort of worked standard within the system. So we've come up to, we've actually gone past the time that we had allotted. The last item that I did have is probably going to take a little bit more time than 5 or so minutes, but I wanted to show that you could go out and create your own role centers within Dynamics AX and then assign them to users. And just to illustrate what you could do is, when you create your own role centers, you shouldn't just be restricted to the way that Microsoft lay things out, which is 2 columns. You can do everything that you can do within SharePoint within these role centers, and if you see over here, then I've actually got a gutter of information that's showing me all of my Power View reports, and I can expand these out, but then I have a larger area for maintaining information. So you've got a lot more formatting options that you can take advantage of. So don't think that you're stuck with the role centers, that you can go out and you can extend these out. And for anyone who's interested, I'll pass on to Jason all of the walkthroughs on actually how to do this within your own system. So I've talked for a little bit, and I've over-talked by a couple of minutes. I'm going to take a break. I'm happy to answer any questions that may have come up, and I'll pass it back over to Jason.
All right, yeah, we would love to take any more questions that we have time for right now. I have posted, hopefully everyone can see that, a link to the earlier webcast that Murray did on other sort of development tweaks, and that is online. You can check that out on our YouTube channel, right on our site. A couple of questions on document management, Murray. So one, I think you touched on, but is document management available and accessible to other modules like AR, AP, and GL, and others?
Yeah, it's accessible as far as I know now. And as far as I know, and I went in and I looked at the code, then that document management applies throughout the system, because the key thing is that when you add that menu button, then it calls a menu which is the document management, and it allows you to it picks up the reference key for whatever you're in, and then that's what it's attaching to. So if, for example, you did want to go out here and change this, and maybe don't put it here onto the sales orders, but maybe you put it onto the released product table, or I'm trying to think of something else like the vendor, onto the vendor table and did the same thing, then it's the same process that you go through. Go out and you find the table, find the form, find the related information, and then just drag that button over, and it's going to pop up within that group. So it's a sales and marketing feature, but I don't know why it's not being taken advantage of in all of the other menu items and all the other modules, because it's pretty darn cool how you can manage this.
All right, I'm only seeing one other question in the queue. And I'd just like to note to folks, after we wrap up, you will see a quick survey pop up that should probably only take you about 30 seconds to fill out. We really appreciate that feedback. Our speakers do as well. Final question we have here, are you adding document functionality to your machine only or across all users? And if it is your machine only, how do you expand the scope to all users?
No. Well, this is because I'm making this change here in within the AOT, against the actual form itself, then I'm making this change for everybody. So there's no need to go out and update any particular user's machine, because it's going to be here within the table itself. If you go out and do, for example, the first item that I showed, which was a personalization, that is just for my personal machine, for my own personal use. If you pick and choose whether you go and make the change physically within AOT, or if you go and just do a personalization based on what you're trying to do. If, in the first example, if I went out and was trying to create an additional date that everybody would use, then I'd go out and skip the personalization, and I'd go into the forms directly here and then roll it out that way. It's going to be global, and then the next time anyone comes into the form, they're going to see that change.
All right. Well, with that, we will start wrapping up here. First, Murray, let me just say thanks to you for spending the time today and speaking with everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just trying to spread the faith that everybody can be a developer in one way or another, and everyone can do a little bit of coding here and there.
Absolutely. You have your contact information up there right now. Everyone really should be following Murray on Twitter. I know he's always open to take questions as well. His blog is awesome, so definitely check that out too. Thanks again. Please do look out for that survey as we depart here, and have a great day.
Okay, and thanks everyone for sitting in.